There is a kind of woman who walks into a room and something shifts. The air changes, conversations pause, eyes drift. And the fascinating thing is, she is not always the youngest woman in the room. She is not always the one wearing the most revealing outfit, or laughing the loudest, or trying the hardest to be noticed. She is often the one who seems completely unbothered by whether she is noticed at all. She carries herself with a quiet dignity that is almost magnetic. She listens when others speak and means it. She smiles in a way that reaches her eyes before it reaches her lips. She asks questions that make you feel like your answer genuinely matters to her. She has opinions, boundaries, stories, and a depth that you can sense even before you know a single fact about her life. And men notice. Men notice deeply. Men notice in a way they often cannot even articulate until someone asks them directly what they find most attractive about older women, and then the answers pour out of them like they have been waiting to say these things for years. They say things like, "She makes me feel calm. She does not play games. She knows who she is. She actually listens. She is warm without being desperate. She is confident without being cold. She is real in a way that younger women sometimes have not had time to become yet." And hidden beneath all of those answers, quietly threading through every single one, are 5 specific things that older women do. Things that might seem small, things that might seem ordinary, things that the women themselves might not even realize they are doing, that men find absolutely irresistible, not attractive in a fleeting, surface-level way, irresistible in a deep, soul-level way, the kind of irresistible that makes a man want to stay, the kind that makes him think about her at random moments in his day, the kind that makes him realize, often with genuine surprise, that this woman is different from anyone he has ever known. Today, we are going to talk about all 5 of those things. We are going to go deep. We are going to explore not just what these things are, but why they work the way they do. What is happening beneath the surface when a man encounters these qualities, and how they connect to something fundamental about human longing and human connection. Stay with me until the very end, because the 5th one especially might surprise you. It surprised a lot of the people we spoke to, and it might change the way you see yourself. Welcome to the Heart Compass, the channel that helps you navigate love, connection, and the beautiful, complicated journey of being human. I am so glad you are here today, because the conversation we are about to have is one that I think a lot of people have been waiting for, without knowing they were waiting for it. If this is your first time here, welcome. This channel exists for people who are done with shallow takes on relationships and attraction and human psychology. This channel is for people who want to go beneath the surface, who want to understand not just what works, but why it works, who want to walk away from every single video feeling like they understand themselves and the people in their lives just a little bit better than they did before. If that sounds like you, then I want to encourage you right now to subscribe to the Heart Compass and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We put out content that goes deep, and if you have found your way here today, I think you are the kind of person who appreciates depth. So stay with us. Join this community. We would love to have you. And if you have been here before, welcome back. You know how we do things here. You know that we take our time, that we do not rush through ideas, that we treat you like an intelligent adult who is capable of sitting with complexity and nuance and coming out the other side with something genuinely valuable. So thank you for coming back. It means the world. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really take a moment with this question. Think about the most memorable, most magnetic, most genuinely captivating woman you have ever encountered in your life. Not the most conventionally beautiful, not the most successful, not the most perfectly put together, just the one who left the deepest impression. the one you still think about sometimes, the one whose words still echo in your memory, even though you may not have spoken in years. What made her that way? I would be willing to bet that if you sit with that question long enough, you will start to notice that the answer has very little to do with her appearance and very much to do with how she made you feel, how she moved through the world, the specific things she did and said and projected without even trying. And I would be willing to bet that somewhere in that list of qualities, you will find echoes of the 5 things we are about to discuss today. Now, I also want to say something before we begin, because I think it matters. This video is not about performing. It is not about learning tricks to manipulate men into finding you attractive. It is not about pretending to be something you are not or adopting a persona that does not feel genuine. This video is about recognition. It is about helping you recognize qualities that you may already have, that you may be undervaluing, that the world around you may have convinced you are not important or not relevant or not enough. It is about holding a mirror up so that you can see yourself the way a certain kind of man, a real, emotionally mature, genuinely good man, actually sees you. Because here is the truth that nobody talks about enough. Older women are often carrying around a deeply unfair narrative. A narrative that says their best years are behind them. A narrative that says they have somehow become less desirable with each passing year, less relevant, less worthy of pursuit and devotion and passionate love. A narrative that is, in almost every measurable way, completely and utterly wrong. The qualities that make older women magnetic are not things that fade with age. They are things that deepen. They are things that develop. They are things that take time and experience and heartbreak and growth to acquire, and no amount of youth can manufacture them. So let us talk about what they actually are. If you appreciate this kind of content, if you believe that love and connection and the emotional lives of women deserve thoughtful, serious attention, please take a moment to like this video before we go any further. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes an enormous difference in helping more people find this conversation. And if you have something to share, something this brings up for you, something you want to add or push back on or explore further, please leave it in the comments. I read every single one, and those conversations matter deeply to me. And if you really want to support what we are building here at The Heart Compass, you can show your love through super thanks right here on this video. Every single contribution goes directly into making more content like this, going deeper, being better, reaching more people who need it. It means more than I can say. All right, let us begin. Thing number 1, she makes him feel genuinely seen. There is a moment that almost every man has experienced at some point in his life, a moment that tends to stay with him for a very long time. And it goes something like this. He is talking to a woman, and something happens that almost never happens. She actually listens, not politely, not while checking her phone, not while formulating her response, not while glancing around the room to see who else is there. She listens with her whole self. She is present in a way that feels almost startling, almost unusual, almost too good to be real. She makes eye contact that holds. She asks a follow-up question that proves she was not just waiting for her turn to speak. She references something he said 5 minutes ago and connects it to something she noticed about him just now. She laughs at the right moment, not to perform amusement, but because something genuinely struck her. She does not rush past his words. She sits with them. She lets them land. And in that moment, something shifts inside of him that is very difficult to put into words. He feels, often for the first time in a long time, or sometimes for the first time ever, like he is actually being seen. Not his job title, not his bank account, not the version of himself that he performs for the world, because the world seems to prefer that version, him, the actual, real, complicated, uncertain, hoping, struggling, trying him. and he does not know what to do with that feeling because it is so rare. Men, particularly in Western culture, are not taught to expect this. They are not socialized into environments where they are deeply listened to and genuinely seen. From the time they are very small, they are taught to perform competence, to suppress vulnerability, to project certainty. The emotional landscapes of men are frequently treated as inconvenient or irrelevant, or something to be managed rather than explored. So when a woman, especially an older woman, who has the life experience and the emotional intelligence to really hear another person, actually sees a man, it lands differently than almost anything else she could do. It is not a small thing. It is an enormous thing. It is, for many men, the single most disarming and irresistible thing a woman can offer. And here is what makes this particularly interesting when it comes to older women specifically. The capacity to truly see another person is not something most of us are born with. It is something we develop. It comes from having been through things ourselves. It comes from having felt invisible and knowing what that costs. It comes from having done the interior work, the kind of self-examination and emotional processing that life tends to force upon you if you are paying even the slightest bit of attention. Younger women, through absolutely no fault of their own, often have not had enough time yet to develop this quality. They are still learning who they are. They are still building their own sense of self, which means they are often still focused inward in ways that are completely natural and appropriate for where they are in life. But that can make true, deep, sustained attention to another person difficult to sustain. Older women have often moved through that stage. They have developed a sense of self that does not depend entirely on external validation, which paradoxically frees them up to direct their genuine, unhurried attention outward. To really look at the person in front of them, to really listen, to really be curious about someone else's interior world. And that curiosity, that real, unhurried, genuine curiosity about who this person is and what they carry and what they dream about and what they are afraid of, is one of the most quietly powerful forces in human connection. Men feel it immediately, even if they cannot name it, even if they would not describe it in these words. They feel the difference between a conversation with someone who is performing attention and a conversation with someone who is actually present. And the woman who is actually present stays with them. She stays with them in a specific way that the men we spoke to described again and again. They said things like, "I found myself thinking about her for days afterward. I kept replaying our conversation. I wanted to tell her things I had never told anyone. I felt like she would actually understand, like she would not judge me, like she could hold whatever I said and not use it against me." That feeling of safety, that specific flavor of emotional safety, is what genuine attention creates, and emotional safety is one of the foundational building blocks of real intimacy. When a man finds a woman who makes him feel genuinely seen, he does not just feel attracted to her. He begins to feel attached. He begins to feel, often without intending to, like this woman is someone he could actually open up to, someone he could actually be real with, someone he could actually love. And that is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily powerful. Now let us talk about what this actually looks like in practice, because I think it is important to be concrete here. Being genuinely seen is not just about listening, though listening is a huge part of it. It is about the quality of attention you bring to another person. And quality of attention is something you can cultivate. It starts with presence. Real presence. The kind of presence that means when you are with someone, you are actually with them, not mentally composing your grocery list or rehashing something that happened earlier or planning what you are going to say next. You are here. You are in this moment. You are with this person. It continues with curiosity, genuine curiosity, the kind that asks questions because you actually want to know. not because you are trying to seem interested, the kind that goes beyond the surface. Not just what do you do, but what do you love about it? Not just where are you from, but what do you miss about it? Not just how was your day, but what was the moment today that felt most alive? It deepens with memory when you remember what someone told you, not because you were trying to remember, but because you were actually listening, which meant it actually went in. It lands as an act of profound care. When you circle back to something from a previous conversation, when you ask about the thing they mentioned last week, when you connect two things they said in different contexts, you communicate something that no amount of flattery can communicate. You communicate, I was paying attention. You mattered enough to me that I was actually paying attention. And it completes itself with acceptance. When a man feels that the woman who is seeing him without flinching, without immediately trying to fix or improve or redirect what she sees, when she receives what he shares without judgment, without weaponizing it, without making him feel foolish for having shared it, when she holds what she sees about him with gentleness and respect. That combination, presence, curiosity, memory, and acceptance, is what it means to truly see someone. And when a woman brings that to her interactions with a man, she becomes someone he cannot stop thinking about, someone he wants to return to, someone he recognizes on some deep, wordless level as a genuine rarity in a world that mostly skims surfaces. This is the first thing, and it sets the stage for everything that follows. Thing number 2, she is emotionally steady in a way that feels like coming home. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that men rarely talk about openly, but that many of them carry. It is the exhaustion of never quite knowing what emotional weather to expect, the exhaustion of walking on eggshells, the exhaustion of relationships that feel like a constant navigation of emotional landmines, where something you say or do or fail to do can trigger a disproportionate reaction, and you never quite know what that something is going to be, and so you are always, in some low-level way, braced. This is not about dismissing women's emotions. This is not about pretending that emotions are not valid or that women should suppress them, or that emotional responses to real situations are somehow unreasonable. That is not the argument here at all. The argument here is about something much more specific. It is about the difference between emotional expression and emotional volatility, between feeling things deeply and being ruled by them, between having a rich emotional inner life and making the people around you responsible for managing it. And older women, because of what they have lived through, because of the emotional work that life tends to require if you are engaged with it honestly, frequently develop something that is almost ineffably valuable. They develop emotional steadiness, a kind of internal equilibrium, a quality that might be described as groundedness or settledness or, and this is the word that many men use when they try to articulate it, calmness. Not the calmness of someone who has shut down, not the calmness of someone who is numb or checked out or past caring, the calmness of someone who has been through storms and knows they can survive them, the calmness of someone who has processed enough grief and enough disappointment and enough uncertainty to understand that those things are part of life, not signs that life has broken irreparably. The calmness of someone who has learned that their emotions, as real and as valid as they are, do not have to be everyone else's emergency. This quality, this emotional steadiness, is something that men respond to on a level that is almost visceral. When a man is with a woman who is emotionally steady, something in him relaxes. Some vigilance he has been maintaining, some constant low-level scanning for danger signals, quietly switches off. He can breathe. He can be. He does not have to manage anything or brace himself or calculate carefully before speaking. He can just exist in her presence. And that feeling, that particular flavor of relaxation and safety and ease, is addictive in the most beautiful possible sense of the word. It is what men are reaching for when they say things like, "She feels like home." It is what they mean when they say, "I feel like myself around her." It is what is underneath when they say, "I have never been able to relax like this with anyone before." Now, let us be very precise about what emotional steadiness is and what it is not, because there are some misunderstandings that tend to arise around this idea. Emotional steadiness is not emotional flatness. It is not the absence of feeling. An emotionally steady woman still feels everything. She still gets hurt. She still gets frustrated. She still experiences sadness and longing and fear and joy in their full intensities. She does not suppress these things. She does not pretend they are not there. What she does differently is this. She has developed a relationship with her own inner states that is characterized by awareness rather than identification. She can feel something without becoming it. She can recognize an emotion, name it, give it space, and then choose how to respond to it rather than simply reacting from the center of it. This is one of the most sophisticated emotional skills a human being can develop. And it takes years. It takes practice. It takes, quite honestly, a certain amount of suffering and survival and growth that tends to come from having genuinely lived. Emotional steadiness also does not mean never expressing difficult emotions or never communicating needs. An emotionally steady woman absolutely communicates when something is wrong. She expresses hurt when she is hurt. She names her needs clearly. She does not pretend everything is fine when it is not, but she does so from a place of groundedness rather than reactivity. She can say, "This hurt me," without making it an accusation. She can say, "I need this," without making it a demand backed by threat. She can address something difficult without it becoming a crisis. She can hold difficult conversations without them spiraling. And this, for many men, is revelatory, because so many of the relationships they have experienced, both romantic and otherwise, have modeled a very different approach. An approach where emotions are expressed as immediate, intense, unconstrained reactions, where difficult feelings become accusations, where needs become ultimatums, where conversations about problems turn into conflicts. And so when they encounter a woman who can have a difficult conversation without it escalating, who can be hurt and say so without weaponizing her hurt, who can need something and name it without making the naming of it a punishment, who can hold space for complexity and disagreement and imperfection without it meaning that everything is broken. They do not just find it attractive, they find it almost unbelievable in the best possible way. They find themselves thinking, "This is what it could feel like. This is what it is supposed to feel like. This is what I have been looking for without knowing I was looking for it." And here is the thing about emotional steadiness that I want to emphasize, particularly for women who may be reading this and feeling uncertain about whether they have this quality. You have likely been building it your entire life. Every hard thing you have survived, every loss you have processed, every difficult season you have moved through, every moment when you chose to feel something fully and then chose what to do next, rather than just reacting from the center of your pain. All of that has been building your emotional steadiness. You may not call it that. You may call it resilience or strength or just getting through it. But the man who is right for you will recognize it immediately. He will feel it in the way he feels around you. He will feel it as safety. He will feel it as ease. He will feel it as something very close to what the word home means when it refers to not a place but a feeling. There is one more dimension of emotional steadiness that I want to address, because I think it is one of the most underappreciated aspects of this quality, and it connects directly to what men find most irresistible about it. Emotional steadiness creates trust. When you are with someone whose inner weather is relatively predictable and manageable, you trust them. Not because they are perfect, not because they never have hard days, but because you know that their hard days are not going to become your emergency. You know that you can tell them the truth and not have it trigger something you cannot handle. You know that if you make a mistake, the consequence will be proportionate. You know that the space between you is safe enough to be real in. That kind of trust is the foundation of real intimacy, and older women, through the simple process of having lived and learned and grown, are often extraordinarily well positioned to create it. This is not a small gift. It is one of the most precious things one human being can offer another. Thing number 3, she touches kindness without apologizing for it. Here is something that has happened in the culture, something subtle but significant, that I think has caused a lot of confusion and a lot of unnecessary suffering. Somewhere along the line, in the pursuit of strength and independence and not needing anyone, kindness got conflated with weakness. Warmth got conflated with desperation. The impulse to nurture and care for another person got treated like something embarrassing, something to be managed, something to be doled out carefully so as not to reveal too much. And the result, for many women especially, has been a complicated, conflicted relationship with their own natural tenderness, a sense that caring too openly is a vulnerability that will be exploited, that being warm and sweet and genuinely loving toward someone is handing them a weapon, that the safest strategy is to maintain a certain coolness, a certain detachment, a certain performance of not caring too much that might protect you from being hurt. I understand where this impulse comes from. I do. There are real experiences behind it. There are real ways in which openness has been punished and softness has been taken advantage of. That history is real and it deserves to be honored. But I also want to say something that I believe very deeply, something that the men we spoke to confirmed over and over again in ways that moved me. Kindness is not weakness. Warmth is not desperation. The capacity to be genuinely, openly, unself-consciously loving toward another person is one of the most powerful things a human being can possess. And older women who have learned to inhabit their own sweetness without apology, who have stopped performing toughness and started simply being real, are almost universally described by the men who know them as the most magnetic women they have ever encountered. Let me tell you what this looks like, because it is not grand, it is not elaborate, it is in the small things, and the small things are everything. It is the text she sends when she knows he had a hard day, not a long text, not a text full of advice or solutions, just a message that says, "I am thinking about you." It is the way she remembers that he mentioned 3 weeks ago that he loves a particular kind of coffee, and she has it ready for him when he comes over without making a production of remembering. It is the way she laughs at his jokes, not because she is performing delight, but because she actually finds him funny and does not feel the need to play it cool about that. It is the way she puts her hand on his arm when she is listening. It is the way she says his name. It is the way she looks at him when he has said something that pleased her, with an openness and a warmth that makes him feel like he has done something genuinely wonderful. These things are not calculated. They are not strategic. They are the natural expressions of a woman who has stopped performing and started simply being. A woman who cares and is not ashamed of caring. A woman who is warm and does not feel the need to protect herself from the vulnerability of that warmth by pretending she is not. And here is what this does to men. Men are, in so many spaces in their lives, operating under the assumption that genuine, unconditional kindness toward them is either rare or has strings attached. They have learned to be somewhat suspicious of warmth because they have encountered too much warmth that was actually manipulation in disguise, too much sweetness that turned sour the moment they failed to perform in the expected way, too much warmth that was conditional on them being exactly what the other person needed them to be. So when they encounter genuine warmth, warmth that comes with no agenda attached, warmth that is not a performance but an honest expression of care, warmth that continues even when they are not at their best, warmth that is simply who this woman is. They do not know what to do with it at first, because it is so unfamiliar, and then once they trust it, once they have seen enough evidence to believe that it is real, something happens in them that is remarkable. They soften, they open, they start being kinder themselves. They start expressing things they have spent years keeping private. They start showing up in ways that even they did not know they were capable of, because kindness invites kindness. Warmth generates warmth. When a woman is genuinely, undefensively caring toward a man, she creates the conditions in which he can access the parts of himself that are also caring, also tender, also capable of genuine softness. And those parts of him, the parts that have often been suppressed or dismissed or told to toughen up, are desperately hungry to be allowed out. The older woman who carries her kindness openly, who does not apologize for her warmth, who touches tenderness without treating it as a liability, does something extraordinary. She makes it safe for the man she is with to be fully human. And that is not a small thing. Now, I want to address something here because I think it is important. There is a difference between kindness and self-abandonment. There is a difference between warmth and people-pleasing. There is a difference between caring genuinely for another person and losing yourself in the process. The kindness I am describing is not the kindness of a woman who agrees with everything he says to avoid conflict. It is not the warmth of a woman who suppresses her own needs to take care of his. It is not the sweetness of a woman who performs pleasantness because she has learned that disapproval is dangerous. The kindness I am describing comes from wholeness, not from lack. It comes from a woman who knows herself well enough and values herself deeply enough to give care freely, without resentment, without expectation of being repaid in a specific currency. She is kind because kindness is an expression of who she is, not because she is trying to earn something, and the difference is perceptible. Men can feel the difference between a woman who is kind because she is afraid and a woman who is kind because she has enough. The former makes them feel vaguely uncomfortable, vaguely responsible, like there is some debt accumulating that they will eventually be asked to pay in a way they did not agree to. The latter makes them feel genuinely cared for, genuinely lucky, genuinely grateful. The older woman who has done enough inner work to know the difference in herself, who can be genuinely warm and giving from a place of fullness rather than a place of fear, is offering something that most men have spent their entire lives hoping to find. She is offering real love, freely given, without scorecards, without conditions, without calculation, and that is among the rarest and most beautiful things in the world. Thing number 4, she has a rich inner life and she is not afraid to share it. There is a certain kind of conversation that changes you. The kind where you walk away knowing something you did not know before, not just about the topic you discussed, but about yourself. The kind where the person across from you says something that makes you see your own life differently. The kind that lingers for days, that you return to in quiet moments, that shapes the way you think about things going forward. These conversations are rare, and older women, in the experience of a very large number of men, are extraordinarily likely to be the people who initiate them. Here is why. A rich inner life is not a birthright. It is something you build over time through reading and thinking and experiencing and questioning and sitting with uncertainty and wrestling with ideas that do not resolve neatly. It is something that develops through years of paying attention to the world, to other people, to yourself, through heartbreak that forced you to examine what you actually value, through loss that forced you to confront what is actually essential, through failure that forced you to understand yourself more honestly, through triumph that forced you to ask whether this was actually what you thought you wanted. The interior world of a woman who has lived a full, engaged, reflective life is vast and deep and full of territory that most conversations never come close to mapping. She has opinions that were not given to her by the culture. She formed them. She has beliefs that she has tested against her own experience and found to be true. She has perspectives that are genuinely hers, that surprise even her sometimes when she articulates them out loud, and when she shares this inner world, not as a performance, not as a way of impressing someone, but simply as an honest expression of who she is and how she sees things. It is magnetic in a way that is almost impossible to overstate. Men who have had this experience describe it in remarkably consistent ways. They say things like, "She made me think about things I had never thought about before. She had a way of looking at the world that I found genuinely fascinating. I could talk to her for hours and it never felt like enough. She was the most interesting person I had ever met." They also say something that is perhaps even more revealing. She was interested in ideas, real ideas. She cared about things. She had passions that had nothing to do with impressing anyone. She read, she thought, she noticed things. She had a perspective on the world that felt genuinely her own. And that quality, having a genuine perspective that is truly your own, is more attractive to a certain kind of man than almost any physical attribute. Because here is what a rich inner life and the willingness to share it actually does in a relationship. It creates real conversation, and real conversation is the mechanism through which people fall in love at the deepest level, not the falling in love of chemistry and physical attraction, though those things are real and valuable. The falling in love of minds meeting, of finding someone whose inner world resonates with yours in ways that feel almost eerily perfect, of discovering that the thoughts you have had in your most private moments, the thoughts you were not sure anyone else had, are thoughts this person has been having too, of understanding each other in ways that feel like recognition rather than discovery. This kind of falling in love is quieter than the other kind. It does not announce itself with fanfare, but it is also deeper and more durable and more real. And it is facilitated almost exclusively by the willingness to show your actual inner world to another person. An older woman who knows herself well, who has a rich and genuine inner life, and who is willing to open that world to a man she trusts, is offering him something extraordinary. She is offering him the possibility of a genuine meeting of minds, a genuine partnership of consciousness, a love that is not just about how good things feel in the beginning, but about how deeply two people can actually know and appreciate each other. Now, let me talk about what a rich inner life looks like in practice, because I think it is worth being specific. It looks like having opinions about things and being willing to share them without needing everyone to agree. It looks like having aesthetic sensibilities, things you find beautiful, things you find moving, things you find deeply interesting, that are genuinely yours rather than borrowed from whatever is currently popular. It looks like reading, whether that is books or long-form journalism or philosophy or history or poetry, and having the kind of relationship with ideas that means you think about what you read and let it interact with what you already believe, and sometimes change your mind and sometimes have your existing views deepened. It looks like having passions, real passions, the kind that exist not because they are impressive to others, but because they genuinely light something up inside you. A woman who is passionate about something, anything, who lights up when she talks about it, who brings genuine energy and enthusiasm to a subject she loves, is irresistible in a way that is difficult to explain but impossible to deny. It looks like having questions. A woman with a rich inner life is almost always curious. Curious about the world, curious about ideas, curious about people, curious about the places where certainty dissolves into mystery. She asks real questions. She sits with the answers long enough for them to actually teach her something. She is not satisfied with the first explanation. She goes deeper. It looks like having a relationship with beauty, a woman who has cultivated her aesthetic sense, who can look at a painting or a piece of music or a sunset or a line of poetry and actually be moved by it, who can communicate why she finds something beautiful in a way that makes you see it too, is offering a kind of intimate access to her inner world that is deeply connecting. And it looks like vulnerability, the willingness to share the parts of your inner world that feel uncertain, the thoughts you are not sure you are allowed to have, the questions you do not have answers to, the things you find confusing or frightening or overwhelming, the places in yourself where you are still figuring things out. This kind of vulnerability, offered in the right context with the right person, is the single most accelerating force in the deepening of connection, because it says, I trust you enough to let you see me before I am finished. May I trust you enough to be real with you, not just impressive. I trust you enough to share the parts of me that are still becoming. And a man who receives that kind of trust, who is shown that kind of vulnerability, who is invited into that kind of inner world, often finds that he falls in love in a way that surprises even him. He does not just find her attractive, he finds her irreplaceable. He recognizes, often with a kind of wondering gratitude, that this is not something he could find anywhere else. That this particular inner world, this particular combination of depth and warmth and perspective and curiosity and passion and vulnerability is something that belongs to this one woman and this one woman alone. That is the gift of a rich inner life, openly shared. Thing number 5, she loves herself enough to not need his validation. This is the one that surprises people most when they first hear it. And it is also, if I had to choose, the single most powerful quality on this list. Let me explain what I mean. There is a pattern that many men have observed and that many women have lived through that goes something like this. The relationship begins with real attraction and real connection, but somewhere along the way, the woman begins to need things from the man that she has not articulated explicitly but that are unmistakably present in her behavior. She needs him to be consistently enthusiastic. She needs him to express his feelings on a specific timeline. She needs his validation to feel secure in her own desirability. She needs his attention in quantities and qualities that feel to him like they are never quite enough. And what happens to a man in this situation is interesting and sad and worth understanding clearly. He does not fall more in love. He falls less in love, not because he is a bad person or an emotionally unavailable person, or someone who does not want real connection, but because the energy of neediness, the particular frequency of needing another person's validation in order to feel okay about yourself, creates a specific dynamic in a relationship that tends to collapse under its own weight. It creates pressure, it creates expectation, it creates a sense that his purpose in the relationship is not to be loved, but to be a solution to a problem she has. And that problem is a very specific form of inner emptiness that no external validation can permanently fill. And men, on some intuitive level, can feel this. Even if they cannot name it, they feel the difference between a woman who wants him and a woman who needs him in order to feel okay. The former is intensely attractive. The latter creates a kind of creeping, quiet anxiety that erodes desire over time. Now here is where older women, once again, have something remarkable to offer. A woman who has lived fully, who has done her inner work, who has arrived at a genuine relationship with herself that is characterized by self-knowledge and self-acceptance and a certain hard-won self-respect, does not need a man's validation in order to feel worthy of love. She already knows she is worthy of love, not because she is perfect, but because she has done the work of coming to terms with her own imperfection and finding peace with it. Why, she does not need him to tell her she is beautiful for her to feel beautiful. She does not need him to text back within a specific time frame for her to feel secure. She does not need him to choose her in every single small moment in order to know that she is someone worth choosing. She has already done the choosing. She has chosen herself. She knows her own worth. She carries it internally in a place that does not depend on external confirmation. And this quality of genuine self-possession is the most irresistible thing a human being can project. Here is why. When a woman does not need your validation, she becomes someone whose approval is genuinely valuable. When someone's positive regard is available to everyone, when they distribute it freely and desperately, regardless of whether it has been earned, it does not mean very much. But when someone's positive regard is given only when it is genuinely felt, when you know that her appreciation of you is real because you know she is not performing appreciation to secure your attention, when her smile means she is actually smiling and her interest means she is actually interested, then her attention becomes the most precious thing you can imagine. A man who wins the genuine regard of a woman who does not need his validation feels like he has actually won something. Not because she played games or withheld or performed unavailability strategically, but because her regard is real. It comes from a place of genuine discernment and genuine feeling, and that makes it worth everything. There is another dimension to this quality that I want to explore because I think it is equally important. A woman who loves herself enough to not need external validation also makes a very different kind of partner than a woman who is looking to a relationship to fill an inner emptiness. She brings herself to the relationship rather than looking to the relationship to complete her. She offers her fullness rather than her lack. And this changes everything about how the relationship develops. When two people come to each other from a place of relative wholeness, from a place of, I want to share my life with you, rather than I need you to make me feel okay about my life, the relationship becomes something genuinely beautiful. It is not about dependency. It is not about two incomplete people completing each other, which sounds romantic but tends to create very complicated, very brittle bonds. It is about two complete people choosing each other freely, over and over, not out of need but out of genuine love. The older woman who has developed this quality has not developed it by being closed off or by deciding not to care anymore. She has developed it by going through enough difficulty to know who she is on the other side of loss, by loving herself through seasons when loving herself was not easy, by building, brick by brick, an interior architecture that does not collapse when the validation stops, by learning to trust herself, her judgment, her worth, her value, without needing a man or the world or anyone else to confirm it for her. And she brings all of that to her relationships. She brings a stability that does not depend on the relationship going perfectly. She brings a love that is chosen rather than compelled. She brings a security that comes from within rather than from without. For a man who has encountered women who needed him to be their entire world, who needed him to carry the weight of their self-worth along with everything else, who made him feel like his primary function was to plug an emptiness that could never quite be filled. Encountering a woman like this is like putting down a weight he had forgotten he was carrying. He can breathe. He can just love her without it being a rescue mission. He can just be in the relationship without it being a constant performance of being enough. He can be imperfect, have bad days, fall short sometimes, without the entire structure shaking. And in that freedom, he discovers something remarkable. He wants to give her more, not less. He is more committed, not less. He thinks about her more, not less. Because love that is freely chosen feels entirely different from love that is extracted, and she, by not needing his validation, has created the conditions in which his genuine love can actually develop and flourish. One more thing I want to say about this quality, because I think it is perhaps the most important thing. Self-love is not arrogance. It is not selfishness. It is not independence taken to an extreme that pushes people away. Self-love is the foundation of the capacity to love anyone else at all. A woman who genuinely loves and accepts herself is the only kind of woman who can genuinely love and accept another person, because the love she gives does not come with the hidden invoice of needing to get it back in a specific form in order to survive. She can give love that is clean, love that is given for the simple joy of giving it, love that does not collapse into bitterness when it is not returned in exact measure. This is the love that lasts. This is the love that a man who has experienced it will spend the rest of his life trying to find again if he ever loses it. This is the love of a woman who knows herself, who has walked through fire and found that she was still herself on the other side, who has loved and lost and come back to herself each time, who has built, through decades of living and learning and growing, a self that she genuinely likes and genuinely values and genuinely respects. And when she offers love from that foundation, it is something so real, so solid, so unmistakably genuine, that any man with the emotional intelligence to recognize it will know immediately that he has found something extraordinary. The deeper truth beneath all five. We have talked about 5 things: being genuinely present and seeing another person, being emotionally steady and creating safety, being openly kind and warm without apology, having a rich inner life and sharing it honestly, and loving yourself enough to not need external validation in order to feel worthy. And if you have been following closely, you may have noticed that all 5 of these things connect to a single underlying truth. A truth that I want to name explicitly because I think it is the most important takeaway from everything we have discussed today. These 5 qualities are not techniques. They are not strategies. They are not things you can put on and take off, depending on the situation. They are the natural, organic expressions of a woman who has done the work of knowing herself, of becoming herself, of choosing herself, of loving herself honestly. A woman who is genuinely present is present because she has done enough inner work to stop being constantly preoccupied with her own insecurities and anxieties, which means she has space to actually be with another person. A woman who is emotionally steady is steady because she has processed enough of her own emotional history to stop being ruled by it, which means the people in her life do not have to manage it. A woman who is openly kind is kind because she has done enough work on her own sense of worth to give care freely without needing to protect herself from the vulnerability of caring, which means the care she gives is real. A woman who has a rich inner life has it because she has invested in herself over years and decades, in her thoughts and her growth and her perspective, which means there is genuinely something there that is unique and valuable and worth knowing. A woman who loves herself without needing external validation has earned that self-love through difficult seasons and deliberate choices and the accumulation of evidence that she can survive her own life, which means she brings stability and freedom and real love to her relationships. All 5 from the same source: self-knowledge and self-love. This is why these qualities tend to develop with time and experience. Not always and not automatically, but there is a reason that older women who have had more time and more experience are so frequently the women who embody these qualities most fully, not because age alone confers them, but because age, lived consciously, tends to build them. The woman who has paid attention to her life, who has taken its lessons seriously, who has done the interior work that her difficult seasons demanded, who has continued growing and becoming and showing up for herself, even when that was not easy. That woman tends to be extraordinary, quietly, deeply, genuinely extraordinary, and the man who encounters her, if he has the emotional intelligence to recognize what he is encountering, will know. He will know she is different, he will know she is rare, and he will move heaven and earth to be worthy of her. A message to the women watching. I want to speak directly to you for a moment. If you are a woman who has watched this video and recognized yourself in some of these qualities, I want you to hear something very clearly. What you have built over the years of your life, the emotional intelligence, the groundedness, the warmth, the depth, the self-possession. These things have value that the culture around you may have consistently underestimated. You may have absorbed a narrative that says you are past your prime, that you are less than you were. That time has worked against you in some fundamental way. I want to tell you as clearly and as directly as I can that this narrative is wrong. The things that make a woman truly irresistible, truly magnetic, truly capable of deep and lasting love are things that build over time. They are things that require living to develop. They are things that you could not have had at 22, no matter how beautiful or talented or wonderful you were, because they require decades of becoming. You are not past your prime, you are in it. The version of you that exists right now, with everything you have learned and survived and integrated and become, is the most powerful and most genuinely desirable version of you that has ever existed. Not because of what you look like, but because of who you are. And the man who is right for you, who has the depth and the emotional intelligence and the genuine capacity for real love, will see that. He will see it in the way you listen, in the way you hold yourself, in the way you love from a place of fullness rather than fear, in the way you bring your whole, real, complicated, beautiful self to everything you do. Do not shrink. You do not apologize for what you have become. Do not perform youth or simplicity or smallness to make yourself more palatable to someone who cannot appreciate what you actually are. Be all of it. Every difficult, beautiful, hard-won bit of it. The right person will not be overwhelmed by that. They will be grateful for it. Additional reflections, going even deeper. I want to take us further into this conversation because I think there is more here that deserves to be said. We have talked about what these 5 things are and why they work, but I want to explore something that I think sits underneath even that. The question of what men are actually looking for when they are looking for love. What they are reaching for. What they are hoping to find. Because understanding that, truly understanding it, illuminates why these 5 qualities resonate so deeply. Men, like all human beings, are looking for a safe place to land. This is not always obvious from the outside, because the way men are socialized tends to emphasize self-sufficiency and stoicism and not needing anyone in ways that can obscure the very ordinary human need for connection and belonging and warmth. But scratch the surface and you find it consistently. Men want a place where they can put down the armor, where they do not have to be performing competence or confidence or strength every single moment, where they can be uncertain and tired and vulnerable and struggling and still be received with warmth rather than judgment. A woman who offers this, who becomes through her qualities this kind of safe harbor, becomes something that is almost indescribably valuable to the man she loves. She becomes the place he returns to, the person who holds the truest version of him, the one whose opinion of him matters most precisely because she knows him most honestly and loves him anyway. This is what great love actually looks like. not the cinematic version, all grand gestures and electric tension, and perfect bodies, the real version. Two people who know each other honestly and choose each other freely. Two people who have each created, within themselves and between themselves, a space where being real is safe. Two people who are, as the old word goes, companions, people who break bread together, who walk through the world together, who face the hard things together and celebrate the beautiful things together. The older woman who has done her interior work is uniquely positioned to create this kind of love, because she has lived enough to know what she wants and why she wants it, because she has been hurt enough to understand the value of someone who will not hurt her in the same way again, because she has grown enough to know her own patterns and work against the ones that do not serve her, because she has arrived at a place where she is choosing love rather than being driven to it by fear or loneliness or the need to prove something. That conscious, deliberate, clear-eyed choosing of love is itself one of the most beautiful things a person can do. And the man who is chosen by a woman who loves like this, who is received and seen and known and loved by a woman who has done the work of becoming herself, is a man who has encountered something rare. He will not always know immediately how to describe what he has found, but he will know on some level that is deeper than language, that he has found something he does not want to lose, something worth being his best self for, something worth building a life around. That is the power of the older woman who has done her work. That is the depth of what she carries. That is the gift she offers to the person who is lucky enough to encounter her at the right moment. I want to spend a little time now talking about something practical, because I believe deeply that insight without application is incomplete. We have talked about these 5 qualities in depth, but what does it actually look like to cultivate them? For the woman who feels she may not yet embody them fully, or who feels she has them but has lost access to them after difficult seasons. When it comes to the quality of genuine presence and the capacity to truly see another person, the practice begins with noticing where you are not present. We all have moments of being somewhere while our minds are elsewhere. We all have conversations where we are not fully listening. That is human. The question is whether you are willing to practice bringing yourself back, whether you are willing to set down the phone, quiet the internal monologue, and just be here with this person, this moment, this conversation. Presence is a practice, not a permanent state. It is something you return to over and over. Each time you notice yourself drifting, and over time, the returning becomes quicker, and the presence becomes deeper, and the people in your life begin to feel it. They begin to feel seen by you, and the effect that has on your relationships is genuinely transformative. When it comes to emotional steadiness, the practice involves developing a more conscious relationship with your own emotional experience. This does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means learning to witness them rather than simply being swept away by them. It means being able to say, I am feeling angry rather than just being anger. I am feeling afraid rather than just being fear. I am feeling hurt rather than just being hurt. This witnessing creates a tiny but crucial space between the feeling and the response. And in that space lives your freedom to choose how to express what you are feeling, when to express it, how to express it in a way that is honest and healthy and serves the relationship rather than damaging it. Therapy can help with this. Journaling can help. Meditation can help. So can the simple practice of pausing before you speak when you are in the grip of a strong emotion, giving yourself long enough to feel it and name it before you express it, which often changes both what you say and how you say it in ways that make the conversation more productive and more connecting. When it comes to unself-conscious kindness, the practice is about noticing and releasing the impulse to protect yourself from the vulnerability of caring. It is about examining the story that tells you being warm makes you weak, and questioning whether that story is actually true, or whether it is just a protective narrative you built after you were hurt. It is about practicing small acts of genuine care without immediately undermining them with irony or distance, letting yourself be sweet without apologizing for it, letting yourself love out loud. When it comes to cultivating a rich inner life, the practice is pleasurable. Read books that challenge you. Watch films that move you and then think about why they moved you. Explore ideas that interest you even when they are not useful. Take your aesthetic sense seriously. Develop opinions by actually examining the things you like and do not like, and asking yourself what they reveal about your values. Keep a journal that is less about events and more about ideas, about the things you find yourself thinking about, the questions that will not leave you alone, the places where certainty dissolves into mystery. The richer your inner life becomes, the more you have to offer in conversation, in connection, in love. And the more you value your own inner world, the less you need someone else's validation in order to feel that your inner world is worth having. Which brings us to the fifth quality, self-love. The hardest one and the most important one, and the one that is, in many ways, the foundation of all the others. The practice of genuine self-love is not a single dramatic gesture. It is thousands of small daily choices. It is the choice to speak about yourself with the same kindness and fairness you would use to speak about someone you care about. It is the choice to notice when you are being cruel to yourself, in the privacy of your own thoughts, and to interrupt that cruelty with something more honest and more compassionate. It is the choice to maintain your standards, even when it is uncomfortable, to say no when yes would cost you something essential, to invest in your own growth and your own joy and your own becoming, not because someone else told you to, but because you genuinely value yourself enough to do it. It is the choice, over and over, to treat yourself as someone who matters. And gradually, over time, through the accumulation of those choices, something shifts, something solidifies, something that was fragile and dependent on external validation becomes more solid, more internal, more yours. You begin to know in a way that feels different from just believing it intellectually, that your worth is not something that needs to be proved or performed or constantly reconfirmed. It simply is. You are a person of worth because you are a person, full stop. And nothing that anyone says or does or fails to do can actually change that. That is the gift of genuine self-love. And it is a gift that you give not just to yourself, but to everyone you love. What real love looks like. I want to close this section of our conversation with something that I feel strongly about. We have been talking about attraction, about what men find irresistible, about the qualities that make older women magnetic, and all of that is real and worth exploring. But I want to name something that I think is even more important. Real love, the enduring kind, the kind that builds something between two people over years and decades. The kind that is there not just in the bright moments, but in the difficult ones, is not primarily about attraction. It is about character. It is about who you are when things are hard. It is about what you bring when you are scared or tired or disappointed or angry. It is about the way you treat another person, not just when it is easy and romantic and exciting, but when it is complicated and uncertain and imperfect. The 5 qualities we have talked about today are not just attractive. They are expressions of character. They are ways of being in relationship that create the conditions for something real and lasting to grow. They are the things that transform chemistry into partnership, infatuation into love, connection into the kind of deep companionship that sustains a life. And that is what I want for you. Not just to be desired, not just to be found attractive in the first heady stages of something new, but to be loved, deeply and really and enduringly, by someone who sees you fully and chooses you freely and grows with you over time. That is what is possible for you, whatever your age, whatever your history, whatever difficulties you have moved through, whatever stories you have been told about your relevance or your desirability or what you have to offer. You have what it takes to be loved that way, not despite what life has done to you, but in part because of it. We have been on quite a journey together today. We have talked about 5 things that older women do, things that are not tricks or techniques, but genuine expressions of who they have become over a lifetime of living fully, that men find quietly, deeply, irresistibly magnetic. The capacity to truly see another person, emotional steadiness that creates safety, kindness that is given without apology, a rich inner life that is shared without holding back, and a self-love that does not depend on external validation to remain intact. And beneath all 5 of those things, we found the same truth. These qualities are the natural expressions of a woman who has done the work of knowing and becoming and loving herself. They are the gifts of a life consciously lived. They are what time and experience and resilience and reflection build in a person who refuses to stop growing. I want to take a moment to ask you something. What of this resonated with you today? What surprised you? What did you recognize in yourself that you had been undervaluing? Is there something here that you want to explore further, something that opened a door in your thinking that you want to walk through? Please share that in the comments below. I read every single comment. I think about the conversations this community generates. The things you share genuinely shape where this channel goes next and what we explore together. Your thoughts matter here. Please share them. And if this video meant something to you, if it gave you something you are going to carry with you, if it changed something in the way you see yourself or the people in your life, please like this video. It costs you nothing and it means the world. When you like a video like this, you are telling the algorithm that this kind of content is worth sharing with more people. You are directly responsible for it reaching the next woman who needs to hear that she is not less than she was. She is more. You are directly responsible for the next man who finds this and finally has language for what he has been longing to encounter. You are part of this conversation. Please show up for it. If you have not already subscribed to the Heart Compass, I want to invite you to do that right now. We make videos that go deep, that take love and connection and the human heart seriously, that treat you like an intelligent adult who deserves more than surface-level takes on complicated subjects. If that is the kind of content you want more of, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss what we put out next. We would be honored to have you with us. And if this video meant enough to you that you want to do something truly special, something that goes beyond a like and directly supports the making of more content like this, please consider showing your love through super thanks right here on this video. Every single super thanks goes directly toward keeping this channel going, making it better, reaching more people who are looking for exactly what we are building here. It is a way of saying this matters. Keep going, and it matters more than I can express. We are building something here on the Heart Compass, a community of people who believe that love is worth taking seriously, who believe that understanding yourself and the people in your life is one of the most worthwhile things you can do, who believe that real, deep, enduring connection is possible, not in spite of who you are, but because of it. You belong here. I am so glad you came today. Until next time, keep following your heart. Keep trusting your compass. Keep becoming the most genuine and fully alive version of yourself that you can be. Because that person, the real you, fully inhabited, is the most magnetic thing in the world. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.